Alright guys, I am back. Part 3 of a long list of videos I'm making today. So, I just discovered, this story. So there's a influencer, a Christian pro-life influencer named Alex Goodings, I believe. And her Instagram is called Growing Goodings. And she just had she had an ectopic pregnancy. The baby was growing in her C-section scar, and she went through with the pregnancy and just gave birth via C-section to her 8th child. That all of these pro-choice people were telling her she was gonna die, she wouldn't make it till birth, she wasn't gonna survive this. She had all of these people on the pro-choice side of the aisle basically trying to say she wouldn't survive. And this is the whole thing I have. I think it's a miracle and it's amazing that her and her baby survived it, because I do know from what I've heard, ectopic pregnancy is very dangerous for in most cases. But I also want to point something out that I feel like is not getting talked about, because I saw some people being like, yeah, it's her choice. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for her to have a choice. But that's actually not what is happening here. I don't like pro-abortion, pro-choicers basically are trying to piggyback off of her making a choice to continue with the pregnancy that doctors were telling her she should, having a, I don't know if she was told she'd have abortion, but they were basically saying you need to terminate the pregnancy or have the tube removed because it's not viable. But for me, this is proof that not of the fact that we have choices, right? Because no one's arguing against people choosing life. The argument is against whether abortion is legally moral. And I don't think anyone is arguing against emergency surgeries for women who have ectopic pregnancies or high-risk pregnancies where there are no other options. But I do think this story shows something that a truth that I don't think it gets talked about enough, which is that when people fight to protect the life of the baby, they're equally fighting for the mom and the baby, not just focus on the life of the mom. And the woman, I read her post on Instagram, she basically said how she found a team of doctors, a doctor who told her that he specialized in specifically women who have that specific type of ectopic pregnancy. And he's worked with multiple women, and all of them were able to survive this type of ectopic pregnancy, both the mom and babies. He hasn't had a patient die from it yet. And I feel like this honestly to me shows the power of what fighting for life can accomplish, because doctors who actually fight for the life of the children in the womb can do amazing life-saving procedures. And it's actually better healthcare you get out of it, because imagine a world where an ectopic pregnancy wasn't a death sentence for the mom or the baby. That's what healthcare is supposed to fight for. Healthcare should fight for saving lives, not ending lives, right? That's the whole point. I feel like that is being missed when pro-choicers are being yeah, we fought for that choice. It's no, this is not a choice, the choice that anybody who's pro-life is ever arguing about. We're not arguing for women to have better health care so that they are able to have less problems and less issues when they are pregnant. Like, that's something that pro-life people are constantly fighting for: better health care for women and for babies. What pro-choicers are fighting for is to keep the option of abortion on the table. This is not, that was is the issue that people are fighting against, is abortion as the option that is also supposed to be available. But you don't get a life-saving procedure of an ectopic pregnancy from someone who's fighting to end lives of baby in the womb. That comes from someone whose goal is focusing on actually saving lives, not ending lives. That's where I'm like, that's why a lot of pro life people are talking about this story, and like, this is an amazing, um it's amazing to see what we get when doctors actually fight to save the lives of children in the womb instead of ending them. Like, she had a doctor that she was able to find the right doctor who was willing to listen to her, because she didn't want to have to kill her child, basically, which is what all of the other doctors were recommending, because of, they didn't know about it. But I'm like, it's a proof and a testament of, when we focus on saving lives, how we can actually advance to a place where, you know, an ectopic pregnancy is not a death sentence for women. It can be something that a lot of women survive, and it can be something that, instead of, you know, telling a woman with an ectopic pregnancy she has no choice but to abort, actually we have options that can save that child. And I feel like you get that from people who are fighting for the life of children in the womb, not for people who are fighting for your right to have an abortion, because the right to have an abortion is just saying any minor inconvenience within a pregnancy, oh, just have an abortion. That's what pro-abortion does, is say that the life, any minor thing, issue a child might be having, you should just go ahead and abort it. And I think when you have doctors who actually value the life of the child in the womb, they're fighting for ways to save not just the child but the mother as well. So I really think it was like it's a really honestly miraculous story. And even when I looked on the TikTok, there were like so many people in the comments being like, oh, is she still alive? Like, just people basically wishing death on her, or just assuming the worst of her situation, because, you know, like I said, when we don't have a true picture of what is medically necessary during pregnancy, because a lot of women are being told, you know. And also, I feel like this is another kind of side of abortion people don't like, how abortion is also used as a eugenicist tool, a tool for eugenicists and ableists to prosper, because, you know, babies with Down syndrome are often more aborted than those without. You know, a lot of people will abort a child for having a disability because they don't want the responsibility of caring for that child. So it's also a way to literally eliminate the quote unquote undesired types of children, which I think is very, very sad. It's just like, I'm like, y'all talk about how Hitler's bad for hating the Jews, but y'all are some people are literally saying it's perfectly also okay if someone wants to kill their child, if they have a disability, because they don't think they could take care of it. I don't know. I definitely think there's like it's a lot to unpack, but it also is like, there are stories of women who've almost died because of an ectopic pregnancy. So it's not to say like ectopic pregnancies are not a serious risk where you shouldn't consult a medical doctor, but I'm saying like a doctor that fights for life is looking for ways to save the life of that child, a child in an ectopic pregnancy, instead of assuming it's not viable and saying we just have to do this. I feel like when people fight for life, we have the outcomes that Alex Goodings had versus, just abort whatever. Get an abortion because this is not going to work. Get an abortion because your child might have this disability or might have this. And you'll be surprised how many comments I've read on like pro-life videos where someone will share how, a doctor recommended they abort their child because they thought they had a birth defect, and that child was born perfectly healthy. So it's like a doctor can literally recommend a woman have an abortion over a birth defect, and then that child actually be born without it. It's like doctors are not God. That's the honestly the other part of it as well. It's like God is still capable of creating a good miracle out of something that maybe all these other doctors are saying, like, you need to do this, you need to do this. So I honestly feel like what Alex Goodings did was trusted God with her child's life, and that is why her and that baby are both here still today. I also think too, it's just like how many women have been told, their pregnancy was not viable, and maybe if they had gone to a doctor that had a pro-life stance and said, like, I want to fight for your child's life, how many women could have had success stories as well. I think that's like the other side of it that doesn't get talked about. I feel like abortion being the option that's given in like every situation of a supposed inconvenience or, minor of the I don't know. It just seems like I think when you believe abortion is your right, you stop fighting for you're not fighting for health care that is actually advancing the saving of those lives. And I feel like that's where I don't like that. I saw like some pro-choice TikToks basically saying, we're fighting for her choice to choose the life of her baby. It's like, no. It's like, that's not what y'all are actually fighting for. Because no one has an issue with people choosing life. And in fact, it's actually the opposite, because a lot of pro-choicers had an issue with her choosing to continue the pregnancy versus have an abortion. I feel like it was actually the opposite that most of them were doing. So it was kind of like the irony of them to try to like some people to try to flip the switch and pretend like them fighting for abortion is fighting for the life of children, and that's just simply not the truth. The people who fight the hardest for the life of children in the womb are pro-life women and doctors and OBGYNs. Those are the ones who are going to fight the hardest. The ones who are like, oh, let's just recommend abortion. They're not trying to fight for the child to live. It actually seems weird. And I guess it's like that's why I feel like I feel like the pro-choice leans on this whole idea of you have to have a choice. If you don't have a choice, then you're not free, essentially. But when you get pregnant naturally, right, there's only so many options. It's like you're the only real option once that child exists in your womb is it will be in your womb until birth. And without a woman making any choice at all, it's like the only choice they're fighting for is the choice to end the life. Like, that's the choice y'all are fighting for. You're not fighting for reproductive rights. You're fighting for women to be to make a choice to end their own child's life. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right to murder a child. It's not about saving lives. It's not about giving women options. You're literally just fighting for the option to kill a child if you don't want it. I feel like when women want their children, they're not even considering abortion as the option, because abortion is not what women who want their children are going to if they're having a crisis pregnancy. They would be at an emergency room if they were having complications. It's like it gives this false presumption that I feel like a lot of people have this false presumption that having an abortion is like saving their lives, right? Abortion saves lives. It's like every abortion is literally ending a life. So why are we pretending like it's saving lives? What that doctor did, delivering that woman, helping that woman give birth to a pregnancy where that was ectopic, that doctor was saving lives. The abortion industry is not saving lives. It's ending lives and pretending it's doing something good. And I've said this before. I feel like in an emergency situation like an ectopic pregnancy, the doctor's goal isn't necessarily to end the life of the child. It's to save the life of the woman, right? So that's why I don't equate, when people try to use abortions with for medically necessary procedures like a D&C or a tubal ligation, whatever is happening, because I wouldn't say that is the same as having an abortion, but the abortion industry loves to attach itself to situations like I talked in my last video. A lot of people in abortion tries to say it's no different than a miscarriage, because the medical classification for a miscarriage is spontaneous abortion. That's the medical term for it. But as I explained in the last video, abortion and a miscarriage are two different things. But like I said, people in the abortion industry like to manipulate people or women to pretend like abortion isn't as bad as what it actually is. Because as I'm saying, what my definition for abortion is the intentional unaliving of a child in the womb. A D&C or a stillbirth or a miscarriage are not intentionally unaliving the child. Ectopic pregnancy is not intentionally unaliving the child. So that's why I don't like how abortionists essentially try to attach themselves to those issues as well, because those are not issues that are a pro-life stance, at least, is not arguing against women having ectopic pregnancies, women having miscarriages and needing medical care, or any type of high-risk pregnancy requiring a medical procedure. We're arguing against intentionally unaliving and causing harm to a child in the womb. That is what we have an issue with. And also, as far as a late-term abortion that people are trying to fight for, a late-term abortion is never medically necessary. Like, most people, if they were having complications with their child, I can't even think of what situation people are coming to argue for a late-term abortion. Because after, a pregnancy is viable outside the woman's room, which we've advanced so that I think the earliest baby that survived at this point was like 24 weeks, maybe. It might be less now, but I want to say about 24 weeks is the earliest, NICU survival a baby has survived being born at 24 weeks, essentially. But the viability, the age of viability is just getting lower and lower as medicine advances. So the point of me saying this is like, why would it ever be necessary to kill a child in the womb at like 34 weeks or something? What the safest option is typically a C-section. It's like, it would probably be like, what's the reason that someone is deciding at 34 weeks to, oh, actually I'm going to kill this child now? Like, there should not be a reason for any type of late term abortion, in my opinion. But also, it doesn't even make sense that it's medically necessary. But I've heard that there's some legislation who are fighting for abortion after birth, which is basically, it's literally just murder. That's what it is. And I feel like the goalpost keeps shifting. The more we justify abortion at any stage, it's like just the worse it gets. The worst and worse and worse it's gonna get. Like, I don't understand a justification for killing a baby at 40 weeks, at 30 weeks, at any weeks, honestly, because at every point you're intentionally causing harm to another human being, which is why I would argue it's a human rights violation, because what gives you the right as the child's mother to harm it, unless you believe mothers somehow have the right to abuse their own children simply because of the relationship that child has to its mother in its earliest stages. I personally would argue from a legalistic perspective that being someone's mother doesn't give you the right to abuse the child. And it's like, people would be outraged if they heard a woman was beating their 2-year-old child, but for some reason we don't apply that same logic of, a harm is being done to a 2-year-old, but when harm is being done to a child in the womb, that's just okay. It's like the location of that child makes the abuse okay, makes ending its life okay. This is how I guess I dissect things when I think about them. But it's really just a matter for me of anybody whose goal is to intentionally end the life of someone else. That is wrong. That is what the stance of pro-lifer. It's wrong to intentionally cause harm to another human being. And when you support life, it's like there's always dignity to it. I've heard, like, even if someone tells you, well, the baby wouldn't survive more than 2 or 3 days, it's like, well, until that baby actually takes its last breath, why do I have to intentionally kill it? Why not allow it to live up to its potential, up to the fullest day that it could live? And it's like, and also using it might experience, it's going to experience lots of pain, so let's just go ahead and kill it. It's just like, that's what a lot of these arguments are, just very, very bad, in my opinion. It's using like murder, it's pretending like murder is loving, is my personal opinion of a lot of the arguments people make. Pretending like murdering someone is so loving and so good for your child, and you're protecting it from future harm by literally killing it, which is the most harmful thing you can do to somebody. Every time someone brings up, and this is just me, I stand 10 toes down on this. Whenever someone brings up the topic of, a child potentially experiencing abuse later in life is the reason that a woman needs to be able to abort a child, I always pose the question, what is more abusive than killing someone? Like what's more abusive than literally ending someone's life? Like, that's the most abusive thing you can do to someone, abuse is wrong regardless, but it's like that's the worst type of abuse you could do to someone, is literally to end their life, to kill them is the most abusive thing. So I'm like I said, it's pretending murdering someone is this decent moral solution, because there you have to go through all of these moral jump through all of these mental hoops, mental gymnastics to get to a rational defense of killing innocent human beings. Like, when you can't justify the unjustifiable, you have to create all of these scenarios, these really just dumb scenarios that don't actually exist. But on the opposite end, when you are always fighting for the life of the mother and child for survival, there's a lot more empathy to it as well. It's like you're considering the you see this the life is sacred, basically. Life is sacred. It's precious. Not everyone gets it. It's limited. It's something that not you're not guaranteed a long life. You're not guaranteed life at all. And it's like, imagine believing it's okay to cut someone else's life short, to wish something on someone that you wouldn't even wish on yourself. And it's like, everyone knows that if someone says, like, if I were to tell someone your mother should have aborted you, I'm basically telling that person, I wish you were dead, or you should have never been born, which is a very nasty, mean thing to wish for someone or tell someone. So if we know, even in the context of telling someone they should have been aborted, that you're telling them a very mean, nasty thing, it's like, you can't pretend abortion is a good thing. It's like, why are we pretending it's a moral, there's some sort of moral high ground behind abortion, because there is none. And pretending there is one is what makes the arguments get that much worse, in my opinion. And that's often why I feel like the best defense of abortion is typically using the trauma of SA victims. That's why they jump to manipulating people with the trauma of someone who was raped in order to justify abortion. That is the best, in my opinion, the best argument you have for abortion is that a literal crime has to be committed. And also, it's like, no one should, it's like, grape is wrong to begin with, right? It's like, grape should not even exist. So if we're saying we need abortions because grape exists, and you're not fighting against grape existing to begin with, because no woman should even experience that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what. It's like, they're never mad at they're not angry at the right things. Anyways, that's all I have for now. I really just think, like I said, I don't like that there are some people trying to pretend as though them being pro-choice is why someone had the choice to keep their baby alive. It's like, no, pro-choice is not the reason that babies are getting to live now. No one was ever arguing against babies being able to live. We're arguing against babies being killed. That's what made me so angry. It's like, no, you didn't fight for the choice for the baby to live. You're not fighting for more babies to live. That's not what we're arguing about. Why are you trying to swoop on a story where a woman chose life, who is pro-life, by the way, she's pro-life, who chose the life of her child, found a doctor that was specialized enough to save and deliver both, keep the mom and baby safe in that situation. Why are pro-choicers pretending like them fighting for abortion is them fighting for the woman who choose life for their children regardless? Because that's not what y'all are fighting for. And I feel like it's very disingenuous, and I feel like that's what made me angry. So Yeah.